Who is John Divine G. Whitfield, and what does he mean to you?
Well, Divine G is at the very center of the story about a very beautiful community that of men who found each other inside of Sing Sing and saw and witnessed for themselves and lived the beautiful power of the arts and what it can unlock within us. And Divine G is a founding member of this program. You know, it was started in 1996 inside of Sing Sing, and he was one of a few incarcerated men who had a dream to put on a play. And they randomly happened upon a woman named Catherine Vawkins who happened to be at the facility with her husband who was doing some work there, and she was sitting visiting with some of them, and they expressed this dream, and she's like, well, let's do it. And they put on this first show, and then it just grew into this beautiful program that has been around for decades. And I met Divine G 8 years ago when I first started on this project. I discovered this story quite unexpectedly. I had been producing a short documentary inside of a max security prison in Kansas, and on a tour of the facility, we were doing a film about something else, but I passed by a cell and there was a young man raising a rescue dog inside of a cell, and I immediately saw the healing that was happening in both directions between this man and this animal. And I was desperate to know, were there anyone out there doing things differently, like what I had just witnessed? And that night I came across this program, and I reached out to the real theater teacher, Brent Buell, who had written this kind of wild play that was at the center of an article that I discovered on the organization. And he said, if you want to understand what it's really like, you need to meet the men who lived it and come to New York. I'm going to have a breakfast in my apartment. So my creative partner, Clint Bentley, and we showed up there, and the two men that came through the door, the first was this man, Clarence Divine I. Macklin, and the next was John Divine G. Whitfield. And Divine G, as soon as he sat down, he's a man of really kind of clear values. He's someone who fights for justice really in any capacity, and not just for himself, but for the people around him. He's someone who, you know, was able to hold on to his humanity for so long inside of this place as a man who was wrongfully convicted of a crime that he didn't commit. And he was able to hold on to this humanity for so long because of the power of the arts.
Can you tell us the first time you went to Sing Sing in New York?
Well, you know, after we had met these men at Brent's apartment and had this breakfast, there was this wonderful energy in that room. It was the warmth, the affirmation, the care. It was also very distinctly New York, and I was in at that point. I mean, I was really in when I first came across the program online in the middle of the night after producing this short documentary. But as I got to know the program and got to know RTA, they were putting on a production of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night at Sing Sing, and they invited me to come out. And I took the MTA train, you know, up from Manhattan that goes along the Hudson River. And one unique thing about Sing Sing is it's one of the only prisons in the world where a commuter train goes through the yard, you know, several times an hour. And I'd read about that and I heard that, but then you're on the train and you come through, you know, sort of underneath these this razor wire and these bridges through the facility, and you know, you're immediately thinking about what this train represents inside of this place, and how it's a constant reminder to the people who are incarcerated of the world moving by, and that they're sort of staying in the same place. And you know, when you go to a performance there, you go through the security and you turn in your phone and you go through all this, and then you go through these successive gates that kind of close behind you, and then you come into this room where there's now a stage, you know, that is before you, and a show kind of begins, and you're completely transported. You know, you kind of forget the walls around you and the razor wire, and you're just in the presence of these beautiful storytellers.
Divine G has said that RTA has put people who are incarcerated in a position to find love in a place filled with hate. Can we talk more about this program?
Sure. I mean, I don't know that I could say it better than Divine G. That's often the case when I'm around him. He's an amazing storyteller and writer in his own right. But, the power of this work within the program is through what we might all see as like a fairly simple process, putting on a show, from casting to opening night. The sort of transformative growth that can happen through that work of, when a character when an actor is playing a character, it's about sort of stepping outside of yourself and into someone else's shoes. And I think that's the first step towards empathy. And empathy, I think, is the greatest driver of healing, of connection, of the process that we need, and especially people who are incarcerated, who are either, in a situation where they're trying to rediscover their humanity or hold on to it in a place that's designed to break that down and bring people to a place of being a number and not a human being.
Is there anything from your visits at Sing Sing that'll stay with you for the rest of your life?
Well, every one of the visits to Sing Sing will stay with me the rest of my life. I've not only been behind the walls at Sing Sing, but with my creative partner, Clem Bentley, we also were volunteer teachers ourselves in this program. And so we taught a class at another facility called Greenhaven, which is a maximum security prison, also in New York. And, I'll always remember the men, the men in these programs. And most recently, we actually premiered this film inside Sing Sing itself. And that experience, profound doesn't really, you can say that, but it doesn't encapsulate the depth of what that experience was and how, this realization that dawned on us as soon as we came in there that this was the most important audience in the world for this movie.
What do you remember about the first time that you met Clarence Macklin?
I remember it very fondly. It was at that first breakfast 8 years ago at Brent's apartment. And he was the first man to walk through the door that morning. And I almost felt him before he even entered the room, He's just one of those people that he has the thing, the aura. And the reason we all probably use words like that is we don't honestly know how to describe what it is, but we know it when we see it. And it's a presence, But and I think if I were to break down his presence, there is extraordinary charisma. There's joy and humor, and wit. But there's also a lot of depth. He's a highly intelligent person. He's an observer. He watches everything, and is such a student of the human experience. And he takes all that in, and he can also synthesize his own experiences and the things he witnesses into a form of poetry when he speaks. But it feels like anyone can hear it, no matter who you are or where you come from.
Is that something you witnessed with a lot of the men in these programs? Is that they were observers? Maybe their upbringing taught them that they had to be keen and always.
As a survival or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will say that Clarence, despite what other common ground might be from our alumni, he's just different, you know. I
He
never
just
met
has
anyone
it.
like him. He has it.
Can you tell us about the day that you offered Clarence Macklin the role in Sing Sing?
When I first met him, I was like, well, this guy's a star. You know, he's got to be in the film. But we didn't know what the focus of the story was gonna. It took those years to finally come to the place where it was gonna be about this friendship. And once it was a friendship between Divine G and Divine I, there was no one else who could play Divine I. But Divine I, just like there was no one else who could play Divine G but Coleman. You know, those were like certainties. You know, it was so clear. And I remember calling him and saying, like, you know, do you want to do this? He's like, well, was anyone else going to do it? I was like, well, no. I was like, well, yeah, of course. And he also was like, you know, I was like, do you want to be in front of the camera, you know, and play this character? And he was like, I don't want to just be in front of the camera. I want to be in front of it, behind it, in between it. And and I mean, he really committed to that. Like he loved every aspect of the process, from the work he did on the script with us, with his story credit, to as an executive producer and also star.
Of your core cast, I believe you have 13 alumni from the program. When did you decide the movie would be a mosaic of these different men?
I mean, really early on, over 8 years ago, when we were aware of the immense talent in the program, we always wanted that to be a feature of the project. But with time, we only grew more confident that it should be an essential driving force of the project. And also, from when we first had this idea to make this film, we made another film called Jockey that my creative partner Clint directed. And that movie, you know, and me being in a more supporting position and being on set for that, seeing the power of what happened when we brought 3 established actors onto a live working racetrack, and the rest of that cast were real trainers and jockeys and people of that community, and that alchemy of what's happening in this place between people with all this technique and training and then people who have really lived the story that you're telling. There is a beautiful dance that's happening there that makes it more than the sum of its parts. And through that experience, I was like, the things that we were trying in Jockey there, I was like, let's double down on Sing Sing. Let's go all in. Let's put all our chips on this and make it, you know, the beating heart of the story.
And you'd done something similar, correct, with the Border Patrol film that you did?
You know, with Transpecos, we were first, it was like more of an inkling. I mean, we were in the real setting, but it was primarily, you know, trained actors that we brought on. But there were a few times that we would just be like driving down the road in Dimming, New Mexico, and see some really interesting face, you know, behind the wheel of an old pickup truck, and we'd sort of like almost run them off the road and say, you know, do you want to come be in a movie?